Are there any simple cases?
Yes, thank goodness there are.
You mentioned a word I was going to bring up, triage.
Yeah.
In that triage process, and again, I'm glad you're looking at some Six Sigma processes as well, process improvement. Is part of that effort not only just splitting out the complex cases, but really taking a look at the simple ones and move those faster? So, in other words, do some of your cases move through very quickly, or are they all stacked up and first in, first out type of process?
No, we do, and we are sensitive, especially we do have a triage for a disability case, for someone who has a terminal illness or is fighting a serious disability illness and has, pretty clear issues. We work very closely with Social Security and the Department of Labor to expedite those cases and try to bring those to the forefront. So absolutely, we do take triage seriously, but we also, through the Six Sigma process, are identifying those cases where somebody's worked at one agency, they're in one system, we've got a complete file, we can get it done in 3 hours, get it done. So, we're tearing those down and assigning those simpler cases to those more junior employees and our more senior employees who are more familiar with the complexity of those individual complexities of those 500 rules that they need to understand and apply. We can use those more senior adjudicators, the LASers, to handle those. And so the Six Sigma process has really been helpful in terms of helping us define that and to create that front-end process, which we weren't doing before. So it's been a great reform and one which I think when we look at that 20% increase in productivity, I can't give you an exact of what percentage of that is due to that, but that's one example of something we've been able to just get running with.
The two areas of complexity you talked about is certainly people moving around in different agencies, which I can see could be pretty difficult, having different jobs under different contracts with different calculations. I mean, again, that's just, it's growing geometrically in terms of complexity. Do the retirees themselves, can they take on some of the responsibility for getting information? Are you trying to create some systems there in terms of data entries so that they can actually feel empowered to help themselves speed the process along?
Absolutely, Mr. Johnson. The people who know their service best are retirees, and we encourage and are working with the Chief Human Capital Officers Council and our agencies, as well as all of the employee associations and our union partners and management associations. As people are thinking about retiring right now, we encourage them, be 6 months out. If most people know that they're approaching retirement, they're thinking about it. Even if you're just thinking about it, make sure your paperwork is up to date. Go to your HR office and look at your file and see what's missing, and see if they have that, and if not, you can help that HR officer by saying, you know what. You might not know this, but when I was in college, I worked part-time at the Postal Service, and I should get credit for that. Well, they aren't going to know that. That annuitant is going to know that, and they can help then to go to the Postal Service to identify the paperwork that we can have a complete file. So we are asking our annuitants to help us in this regard, and anything they can do to make sure, that like I say, if we have a complete file, the processing time, we'll be able to blow by that 60-day standard. I would love to get to a 30-day standard, but I also know we've got to have realism as we try to tackle this backlog. And so, to the extent we can get help from our annuitants, I'd be very grateful for it.
Well, is that a standard part of the exit process, of the termination process?
In some agencies, it is not standard across the government, no. Some agencies do a better job. Some annuitants, or employees do a better job as they're approaching retirement. And some folks, wait till the very end. And so we have to be ready to handle all of that. But working with the Chico Council, I think we're going to be able to really significantly, the annual audit picture you had, and I want, in fairness to some of the agencies that were mentioned, because that audit is not a scientific sample. It is, we're drawing, cases as best we can. For example, OPM, under that audit, and to be full disclosure, we have a 50% error rate under that. But it was premised on 2 cases, of one of which was incomplete, therefore the 50% error rate. So you can see how, that audit has not been done accurately. And so one of the things we're working with the Navy Six Sigma process on is refining that so we can get a really good monthly snapshot and know who is really holding up the line here by bringing in incomplete files. And the Chico Council has agreed to hold each other's feet to the fire and monthly share the data amongst each other, so there'll be peer pressure. But, I'll also, as soon as we get that, be able to make that available to the committee as well.
As part of this process, and really as just part of the Office of Personnel Management, is there any effort underway at all to take a look at all these labor contracts, take a look at all of these different calculations and try and begin the standardization process?
None of those calculations are as the result of, at least none that I'm aware of, are the result of any bargaining. They're all set in law. So they have all been adjustments or results in that the Congress has enacted. And so federal employees do not bargain over pay, so or nor over their retirement benefits. So none of this variability that we're talking about.
So the question would be, that'd be a recommendation you could make to Congress then to standardize these things.
It is something we would love to work with the committee on as a longer-term project of how we might be able to standardize and reform some of that complexity in the system. Some of it goes back, over 100 years, and we're still responsible,
Okay. Well, you have a receptive audience right here.
Yes.
Let's talk about one good news. I heard that of the $600 million payment to dead people, 500 has been recovered. Can you just tell us how that happened, and maybe can serve as examples for other areas?
Well, it's through a lot of hard work, and it's through the good work of our Inspector General's office. They identified some great reforms that we could do by using Social Security lists and cross-checking and doing mailings using 1099. And so our people just implementing those reforms, and then, we've been able to recover, much of those resources. But we can still do better. And that's why I think having a strategic plan of looking over the horizon, how can we be smarter? And how can we, and we're going to do that together with our Inspector General's team. They've got an outstanding group of people, and I want to give a hats off to Patrick for raising this issue and dogging it. And my commitment is we'll stay on it to do it.
I'm just amazed you recovered $500 million. Now, were those just checks just sitting there and you just had to basically void them out, or did you actually have to go to people and say, you owe us X?
Some of it is people aren't aware, they've been receiving a check and you're the son or you're the surviving spouse and you thought that there was, that they had elected for the annuitant survivor plan, when in fact they didn't. And so therefore, as the spouse, you're not entitled to that check. And so they're not aware that, for example, they presumed that had happened. And it often isn't until you approach and you say, I'm sorry, but, we have to, you can no longer receive this payment. Oftentimes they're not even aware that they were improperly receiving it. But, many of it, some of it, there is some percentage of it that is fraud. And we have to go after those people very hard. Because that's illegal. But it's a very complicated issue. It is multifaceted, and I think what Patrick has designed and what we want to work on in the strategic plan is, we've got to attack this from all the angles, not just one. And that's why I think why developing a good strategic plan on this will do a good job. But I should defer to Patrick.
Excuse me. I thought this might be of interest. It's nice sometimes in a situation like this to put a face on a situation. And most of the retirement fraud is a fraud of opportunity. It's convenient for the family member or a friend or someone who's associated with the person that died to maintain the checks coming, so they don't put themselves in an awkward position of telling the truth. They just keep accepting the checks. Here's a very interesting one that I think is worth reading. we do encounter cases of elder, elder abuse. For example, we found a retired federal employee and military veteran who was evicted from a series of nursing homes for non-payment, while his son was stealing $47,000 in retirement and VA benefits from their joint bank account. This gentleman was transferred to 4 different nursing homes in under 2 years, with his son simply dropping him off at the next nursing home to avoid making payments. The defendant wrote only 2 checks for the nursing home care. He stopped payment on one and wrote the other on a closed checking account. The defendant pled guilty to theft and was sentenced to 19 years, unfortunately, of just probation and restitution of $47,000. OPM received back $36,000. The remainder was returned to VA. So there's just a panoply of these cases out there that we work with.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, can I get 2 quick questions?